Will Interrogator Episode 2 build upon the promise of the first one? I'll let you know my take on it a bit later on. With Warhammer Plus, things are getting better, slowly but surely. For about the second or third time in the last couple of weeks, we're getting 3 shows instead of the usual 2. So it is an improvement. Last week there were 2 masterclasses plus another show. You have to take that into consideration, but it's definitely improved on what we used to get. Last week I had speculated that this means that Games Workshop are getting their act together with all the shows across the board. Regular viewer Gribble Greeble had a different take on things, however. They think that this only shows that they're getting Masterclass together, that they can produce them really easily, as it's quite easy to produce a painting video, but that Lore Masters and Battle Reports will still be quite a way off for weekly shows. So we were both quite interested to see what would come this week. I thought there would be a Battle Report plus a next Interrogator. Gribble Greeble thought that there would be a Masterclass plus Interrogator, and it turns out we got all of it. We got a Battle Report, an Interrogator and a Masterclass. Before we get into the reviews this week, I'd like to talk about an animation that I'd totally forgotten about and we haven't heard of for over a year, and that is Iron Within. Iron Within will see 2 Imperial Guard fighting to defend an Imperial world against presumably the Iron Warriors as the bad guys, or the good guys depending on which way you look at it. The 3D modelling and textures and everything look absolutely fantastic, but the fact that we've not heard a single peep over the last year kinda worries me. So what do you think? Is it still coming or is it dead in the water? I would love to see something like this, although maybe I would prefer to see it from the Iron Warriors point of view. We've had a lot of Imperial stuff, so maybe something from the Chaosy point of view would be good. On to the reviews, and first of all, I'm going to stop declaring that Warhammer Vault is settled and we get the same amount of content every week, because every time I declare that, we get less. Rather than a book and 2 white dwarves as usual, we get 1 of each this week. The book is Imperial Armour Volume 2, War Machines of the Adeptus Astartes. It is 216 pages of tanky goodness, and as usual it's full of lore, backstory, colour schemes, but this book is just packed. It's absolutely packed to the gunnels with information. I'm really impressed with it. One of the highlights of this book for me was this Land Raider. This was actually the Land Raider that was available when I was a wee boy, and I always wanted one, never had it. One of my friends had one and I was so jealous of them. I know you can get one like this from Forge World, but it's not quite the same. So once again, great book, ton of content, and it's fantastic to have access to it whenever you want. The White Dwarf is number 472 from January 2022, which is one of the more recent ones, and it features Warzone Nachman, so maybe that'll tell you just how recent it is. And come to think of it, maybe that's why we only got 1 White Dwarf this week, because it's a more recent one. I'll have to check into that to see if we get 2 old ones or 1 more recent one. Masterclass was all about painting yellow Ironjawz armour, and it was pretty decent. Not one of my favourite ones. It was Louise Sugden presenting, which I know a lot of you prefer, and once again it taught us how to paint like the heavy metal guys. The frequency of Masterclass now makes it so that if there is one that I'm not that bothered about, it doesn't really matter, because I know there will be another one next week, or in the case of last week there was 2, so there was one that I really liked and one that I wasn't that fussed about. So that's great. That is kind of what we wanted from Warhammer Plus and what we expected. We expected a ton of content, not this drip-fed piecemeal thing that we've had. So if this is going to be the new world, then I'm happy about it. It's great to have a library of in-depth tutorials directly from GW showing all their colours and techniques and all that kind of thing. If there's a masterclass next week, then hopefully that means it's now weekly. Fingers crossed on that one. Battle Report was Flesh Tearers v Blood Axes, and it was one of the best, most fun ones so far. I just think they're getting better and better. It was Nick versus Simon. Nick controlled the Orks and Simon controlled the Flesh Tearers. I just think as presenters they're becoming more comfortable every single time they do it. It's people having fun doing the hobby, which is what we're all here for after all. They were using a random deck of mission objectives, which means every turn they got new objectives to carry out, and at the end of the turn they could be cycled, so they'd have different ones to fulfill, and it made for a really fun random battle. You just didn't know what was going to happen next. Sometimes the objectives were good for them, sometimes they were bad. It ended up really close in the end, and it was just a great battle. One thing I could have done without is Nick Baton giving his turn updates in an orc voice, but that's just my personal preference. I do find it funny when they deal out the 10-point bonus for having a painted army at the end of the battle. Seems a tad unnecessary. Can you imagine if they just rocked up to one of these battle reports with grey plastic? It would never happen, but it'd be quite funny. Interrogator episode 2 is called This Is Going to Hurt, and while it wasn't the rip-roaring, action-packed follow-up I was expecting, it was still great. It had lots of information, it moved the story on so far. We got to meet new characters, we got to know more about how the Inquisitor died, we got a glimpse of Jurgen, the Interrogator's abilities, and we also got to see that he subscribes to the Inquisitor thing of you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. So if there are humans in their way when they're trying to fulfill a mission, they'll just go straight through them. They don't mind who gets hurt as long as their end goal is fulfilled. So that's the same here. Typical Inquisitor behaviour. I don't mind the animation style one little bit now. It's out of my mind when I'm watching this. I'm just focused on the story. I think the narration pushes the story on really well. I think you're totally absorbed in it, so you don't notice the animation at all. Because the story's building fairly slowly, I think we'll get a proper full season out of this, although this episode was 13 minutes long, which really isn't enough. But none of the animations have been long enough in my opinion, but I'm not the one creating them, I don't know what's possible. I'm intrigued by the whole setting and I'm still really excited for this, but I just hope we get a bit of action in the next episode. I think we need it. Also, hearing proper swearing in a 40k setting is really weird to me. I half expected a Battlestar Galactica frack, but they've gone all in the swearing, so don't watch it in front of impressionable youths. As always, let me know what you thought of this week in Warhammer Plus. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I'll be doing a short Warhammer Fest roundup every night, so the first one will be tonight, so if you fancy hearing my take on things, tune in for that. Thanks for watching, happy hobbying, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.